So first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to talk to people with different viewpoints and different cultures because you learn so much. So I'm Taimur. I have been diving in dumpsters and playing with Intel's waste for almost 27 years now. Way back in the 90s, I joined Intel, and one of the first things they did was say, go dive in dumpsters because we have a permit limit and we're getting close to it. We need to do better than what we're doing now. So like after many years in university, I'm like, this is what I'm doing? All right. Okay. And I made a career out of it, strangely enough. I've managed all the environmental programs for Intel's fabs. I actually was the waste compliance owner for Intel, and I also was one of the founders of Intel's sustainability group before moving over to supply chain. So now I own the budget and the waste vendors to drive circular economy. So that's sort of me. You can see me there. I was younger then. There wasn't gray. So I'd like to go over what our goals are, the scope of this program, some definitions so we're all talking about the same thing. What are the strategies we have in place to achieve our goals and some of the challenges? And then you can either ask while on the fly or we can hold them till the end, whatever Melissa tells me to do. So very simply, these are Intel's goals. I happen to have written some of these. This is the zero waste goal by 2030, which is achieve zero waste to landfill and implement circular economy strategies for at least 60% of our manufacturing waste streams in collaboration with our suppliers. Net positive water by 2030. Our climate change goals, you can see we have 2040 and a 2030 goal there. And these are what I work on. I also work on the LEED goals too. So with that said, Intel's expanding. Now, this is all public information. Everyone knows about it. We're expanding in Malaysia. We're expanding in Ohio. We're just starting up our two new fabs in Arizona. We're expanding in Germany and Poland. So a lot of fun and excitement happening right now, which leads to some new challenges and a lot of new opportunities. So since I'm talking about waste, I thought I'd start off with a conversation. What is waste? If you're still going to use the product, or you got an exempted material of some sort, or it's no longer waste, or it's a byproduct and you can do something with it, it's not a waste. It's a product. And that concept is key because most people don't have that. They're like, it just goes down the drain and disappears. It's a waste. Or I just chuck it out in the bin. It's a waste. Who cares what happens with it? Well, I care. Intel cares. And we try to do the right thing. And then we have solid waste. Anything that you have a discarded material that's a liquid, contained gas, or solid, that would be a solid waste. And then you have the next level down, which are the regulated wastes, which are subject to hazardous waste regulations or special waste regulation or toxic regulations, various names for the same thing. It's a hazardous waste, it's a regulated waste. Those are the more exciting wastes that I deal with. So what is this circular economy and what are we talking about and how have we done? So in 2022, 6% of our total waste was sent to landfill. Not great. It's got to get better. But of the chemical waste side, the world I live in, less than 1% of that was ours. The other thing I live in is how do I implement circular economies? How do I take something that people considered was a waste and do something better with it? Can I use it as a feedstock? Can I sell it back to manufacturers? What else could I do with it? We hit 67%. So we're getting better. Not where I want to, but we're getting better. So solid waste program. I've always had these conversations with people. People are like, no, you can't count construction. Why not? It generates a huge amount of waste. Or, it's just an office. Yeah, with 7,000 people in it, that campus. Of course you would count that. So this is where one of the key things when you're looking at a program, you have to understand what is the scope. So all manufacturing TD sites, any of our larger office sites and the construction projects, because those all will have material impact on our goals. And then for the chemical waste, it's the manufacturing waste from the processes that we're focused on. When you look at your waste definitions and you say, what the hell is Taimur talking about? Good question. When I'm talking about recycling, I'm talking about you're taking something and it's getting sorted, cleaned, treated, or reconstituted into something to be sold or reused. Reduction is something where I have lots of conversations. People are like, we really need to focus on reduction. I'm like, totally true, but that needs to be done in pathfinding 5 years ahead before it comes into microwave emits. And that's where we have another focus area. And then the whole reuse. This is where I focus on to say, could we reuse something on site? Could someone else reuse it? Could they buy it from me? Could they use it as a feedstock for their process? And that's where the focus is. And when people ask me like, well, how in the world more did you get to where you are today for zero waste landfill? How did you get there? I'm like, well, it's just your normal ISO system. What's your policy? Once your CEO says this is the policy, okay, what's in contract? What did you write in contract so everybody's on the same page? You define who does what, who's got the X on the head, who is responsible. Then you define what is the infrastructure, both internally and externally, to be able to enable this zero waste to landfill. You're going to train people. You need to look at how you're designing your buildings, your docks. What are you doing? Are you enabling your systems to work? How are they monitored? How frequently? Where are you getting the data from? How do you know it's right? And who are you reporting out to? That full circle needs to happen. Otherwise, I don't feel it will be successful. So one of the most important things is everybody needs to report the same data the same way, same units of measure. And this is an example of what we report on a quarterly basis in short tons. This is rolled up to the corporate group in sustainability who own the solid waste goals. And then they do all the QA, QC and analysis of it. All right. Your challenges, though, people ask me like, well, how hard is this? Well, the first question you have to understand is what's the infrastructure offsite? You might be able to segregate everything on site without a problem. But if within your area you can only recycle, say, 3 things, then why are you wasting your time trying to segregate 20 things? You need to understand the market. And then the biggest problem is you need to stop wishful recycling. You have people that think, wow, I have this pen. It's no longer working. I wish it could be recycled. Okay, well, can you take apart the metal and put the metal over there, then put the chemically contaminated material over here, and the spring, okay, that could be, but the plastic bit needs to go to the plastic. No, they take the pen and they throw all of it into a recycling bin, contaminating everything. You'll find like 40% of your office waste gets contaminated. What you thought was going to get recycled ends up going into the trash because people wish to do the right thing. They have something they wish to be recycled, but it can't be. And the other thing is, I mentioned training. I'm actually not that big a fan of training people on solid waste because they don't really pay attention to it. You get one training class a year and nobody remembers it. It's much better to walk and talk. When was the last time your site managers walked and talked to people? That personal connection to understand, oh, that's the waste you generate. It goes here, here, and here. Oh, okay. Someone's telling me, oh, thank God. That's so helpful. Now I know what to do with it. That personal interaction is key for success. And then costs. The number of times that people tell me recycling costs so much. Really? It does? Because I made like $870,000 last year on it. And I avoided another $3 million in landfill fees. So tell me where that cost is. Help me out, because I don't see it. If you design your system right and you operate it right, you will save money. It will not cost you money. And this is what we found globally. Let's talk about chemical waste. My more fun world. To be honest, it's a lot more fun than solid waste. Probably because it's in tanks and totes and it's more exciting. You can figure out more things to do with it. So when people start talking about, okay, what does it used to happen? People used to throw everything in landfills or burn it, or maybe even do some wastewater treatment, or they'd blend it with other things and burn it for energy. Is that where we want to be? No. We want to push up. We want to go beyond recycling. Let's go for direct reuse, or at least direct resale back to the original manufacturers, or maybe resell it through a chemical distributor, or regenerate it for resale at your hazardous waste treatment, storage, disposal facilities. Can you at least do that? Because if you start doing those things, you'll begin to reduce that impact, because perhaps those spent chemicals are now a product that could go back into your system eventually. It might take a few steps, but if you look at the long run and you take a long view, this can happen. And that's where my focus is. So I use the definition from Ellen MacArthur, right? Very well known definition. Basically, keep things in the loop. Stop the linear economy of take, make, and then chuck. All right, let's eliminate waste and pollution, keep the product circulating and regenerating and reusing. For me, for Intel, that means we're focused on reuse, resale, recovery, and recycling for upcycling. We do not consider waste to energy or fuel blending or wastewater treatment or incineration or stabilization and landfill as upcycling, just from a clarification of definitions. So it used to be, in my days of youth when I joined, we'd say, okay, what's compatible with each other, and let's limit the number of tank systems we've got to build and see what we can mix together as long as it's legally possible and you don't form bondo in the pipes or destroy tank systems. Let's do it that way, and then we'll ship it off and work with the vendors to do something with it, generally burn it for energy or maybe some recycling. Mm-hmm. But then an aha moment's happened, and it's happened over the last few years, that, you know what, maybe instead, if we looked at these as money, as spent products that could be reused and resold, maybe we can start segregating more of these and stop building these giant tank systems and build smaller ones and actually resell these back on the markets and lower our total cost of ownership. And that's what I tried to do. The challenge, though, is this is a really difficult paradigm shift. You're talking about changing process engineering mindsets to say, wait, at what step in the recipe can you get me this so I can segregate it out? And at the same time, as you have that next process design release, where are your intercept points? Are you going to hit that window of opportunity to make an impact? And then, you know what the hardest one is? That whole cost. Because everyone's like, well, this is going to cost me this. Yeah, but if I get a return on investment in less than 5 years, that's a 20% return on investment. Who wouldn't take that? Oh, that's a really, really different concept. And you have to begin to work with people to change that cost model, because it's not what construction likes. They want to do first cost only. And we understand why, because it's how they're measured. But the biggest thing is, how do you identify what you can do? So the first thing is, okay, what are the chemicals that are going to be spent in said process tools? Is there a market for those? At what purity levels? And then look, what is the design feasibility to actually be put in a tank system or tote system to capture that specific chemistry at this specific cleanliness level? And then the very important question is, what do the regulators say? Is it legal? How do you do it? What are the markings you need to put on there? Because it still say hazardous waste, or now it's a hazardous material? Do you need to create the safety data sheets because it's no longer a haz waste? Who owns what? What's your hazmat requirements? And then as part of that, you have to look at your financial analysis. As I said, I look at things to see if they can be under 5 years. Others might do it for 2 years. Some others might say, you know what, you do a 10-year ROI, it's great. But you need to understand all those points to be able to make a good argument. And that argument has to be a 1 page to go in front of management. You have to get it down to 1 page, and that's hard. So when people ask me, so how are you measuring this? Well, this is an example. Notice the similarity to solid waste. Quarterly basis, in short tons, I'm looking at spent solvents, so reused, resold, recycled, waste to energy, incinerated, wastewater treatment, or stabilized in landfill. Tell me what happens to it. Why? So I can compare across sites, I can compare across fabs, I can look across process and understand what's going on where. And how does this compare against my projections, which I also do. And when people ask me, well, what are the challenges? The regulations. You have to understand the regulations. What's legal here in the US might not be legal in Germany, might not be legal in Malaysia. You cannot assume because it's legal one place, it is legal in the other. So you have to seek to understand. There's local experts. We have local environmental engineers that are fabulous to work with, and they can teach us and work with us to understand this is how things are possible. And the other thing is understanding what I call the black magic, the process tools and recipes, to ask the process engineers how it can be segregated, what can be segregated, what's the cleanliness level, what's the flow rates, where does it make sense? And the other thing is that cost model. You're fighting against first costs versus operational costs versus disposal costs, understanding all those and being flexible enough to say, this is possible versus just saying no. A lot of people like to say, no, we can't do it. Why not? Well, we looked at it 20 years ago. That was 20 years ago. Let's relook at it. See what's possible. Things change. Internally, though, this is actually some of the bigger challenges. Your operational resources are stretched thin. Everyone's busy. Everyone's working 60, 70-hour weeks. You're busy. Someone coming to you and going, hey, can you do this for me? Is the last thing you want to hear. So the question is, how do you make it easy? How do you make it easy for somebody? So they can go, oh, all right, you're willing to help me? Yeah, I'm willing to write the white papers. I'm doing the return on investment analysis, the NPVs. I'll even pull samples. You'll do all that? Yeah. Just work with me a little bit. Okay. So I'll do the hard work. I'll update the contracts, crunch the data, write the procedures. I've written a lot of procedures in my life. And then reward them. So it's not just you that's saying, look at me. No, it was a team of people that work together to come up with some fabulous solutions. And that will go much further. Global challenge is that whole seeking to understand what are the regulations, what's the infrastructure. For example, what I design for in Arizona might not be the same as what I need to design for Germany, what I design for Malaysia. It'll be different. You need to seek to understand those and understand the cultural differences. How is waste viewed? What do people do at home? Do they have a different way of recycling? For example, the German way, you got 10 bins and they recycle everything and are amazing. Or do you have the US, we're like, oh, we have a mixed recycling bin and probably less than 30% actually gets recycled because we contaminate the hell out of it. Okay, well, you got to seek to understand that so you can understand your systems that you need to build. And then I think someone asked me, I think Mel said, well, how have you done over time? I joined in 97. We were about here, 44%, but I couldn't find that EHS report on that one. This is the data I have over time. When I left that job of diving in dumpsters and went back to my chemical waste, we were at 94%. So I like to think over time I've made an impact. Some good, some bad. With that, I turn it over to you for questions.